Yo patrons, this is Johannes from Noisebud, and today I'm releasing another version of BassFlip. So this is still in beta, version 0.95, so the next beta, pretty much. Let's have a look at it. So, I have had a lot of comments for BassFlip, and it seems like everyone agrees that they love this plugin, and I'm included in that crowd. So that's always fun. For if you haven't seen BassFlip before, this is a plugin that will rotate the face in an intelligent way, the face of the low end in an intelligent way to save you headroom. That means so that you could either just use it as is to make something measure less loud than it would otherwise, or you could do it to have a limiter distort less or a compressor to compress less. So the method comes from an old, from the beginning, analog technique where you use an all-pass filter to rotate the face of the low end, and by that you saved some headroom and could push the signal harder when you for a broadcast or putting music on vinyl, for example. This is my digital implementation of that technique, and there's a lot of things that differs from the analog versions of this. The phase rotation is constant for all the frequencies below the crossover. So the crossover isn't that steep, so around the crossover there will be a little bit of artifacts when the plugin works, but it's the crossover itself is line of phase, so it doesn't affect the phase in the crossover. And the other thing is in the analog version you usually dialed in phase rotation that where you thought that, well, now I'm gaining about half a dB or a dB of headroom, so let's stick with this, and you put that on a whole track. This plugin will analyze the signal constantly and use the phase rotation that is most beneficial at that specific time. And that doesn't mean that it tries to reduce the height of the peaks as much as possible constantly. It's using peak height as one component, and then it uses bass energy and perceived loudness as others. So it's three things that are combined into an algorithm to decide which phase rotation is most beneficial at that specific time. All right, that's BassFlip pretty much, and now I'm going to talk about the changes. So the crossover is the same, it's the same as in the last version. The glide is pretty much the same. I changed the values a little bit. It goes from 0 to 400 milliseconds. I think it went to 1000, so up to a second in the last version. But I changed that. That may change again. So it's just a small change. The reason why I changed this is because I added this button, which I'm going to talk about soon. But first, we're going to talk about power. This was another request from some of you that you thought that it would be good to have a way to just, couldn't you make less phase rotation, pretty much. People asked for a wet and dry control. You can't have that when you're messing with phase, because if you are blending the same signal but with different phase rotations, you will pretty much create another phase situation, so you can't do that. So I thought a little bit about this and come up with this thing. It limits the higher values from being used, so that's what this does. So at 0 it pretty much won't do anything. This is the little number that shows you how much the face is being rotated. So let's have a look at that. You can see that at 100% it could use higher values, so it's more likely to be like 60 degrees or 75 degrees, while on a lower percentage of power it stuck around maybe 20 degrees of phase rotation. So that's power, so you have a little bit of an amount knob, if you like. The window control, this is actually nothing new, or the control is new, but in the last beta, I implemented a function where instead of measuring the signal constantly, I divided the signal into a window. And in the version 0.94, the window was 40 milliseconds. It was set to 40 milliseconds. This control gives you then now you can change that window size. So you can go from 0, which isn't really 0, but it's way faster. I'm not gonna explain why it's not completely 0, but yeah, there is a 0 mode, but we're gonna talk about that later. So you can set the window size, and when this little LED lit up, then that's where it starts to measure, and when it's goes out, go back to black, then the measurement is done and it has implemented rotation value. So you can see how that works a little bit. Let's put this on 100 milliseconds so it's really slow, and have a look. You can look at the meter, so you can see that it stick with what it comes up with until the LED goes out. Then it waits for the next transient in the low, and before it starts to measure for a new value to use at that specific window. I gave you this control so that you could change how often and when the calculations and changes in phase take place, to be able to kind of back off artifacts that phase rotation creates. So that's why you can change the window size. Basically, in slower music, if the tempo is slower, then you can use a higher window size, and if it's faster, then you can bring that down a little bit. That's the basic, but it's not always true, so you have to dial that in yourself and try it for yourself. You can turn off the window, and that goes back. Then this plugin goes back to how it was in the first beta version 0.91. That measures it constantly, and you change the glide time between different rotation values with the glide control. So let's listen to the delta actually. You can hear when the glide time is 0, you can really hear how the phase is changing in the delta, and you can actually hear that in the real signals as well, but it's not as easy. But let's see if you can hear that. In this music, it's hard to hear, but I have a couple of tracks where I used this where it's so obvious, so you just wanted to slow it down. And that's why I added the window version, or the window function, because even at the highest glide level, I could still hear it. So that's why I created the window version. I thought that was better, but then I realized that I wanted to be able to switch. So that's why I gave you this control, so you can turn on the window mode, and that's when this is black, this button, and when that is yellowish, so then it's bypassed. And I actually gonna add some graphics, so when you set this to fixed, then it will take away controls that's not affecting the phase rotation in this mode. And in auto you can see those controls, and I'm gonna do the same with these buttons so that when this is in this position, you can't change the window mode. That makes it just easier to use the plugin. Let's see, power, window, glide. Those I've talked about those. Then we just have this little thing down here. It's there for development reasons. I probably will remove them. The first numbers are the same as in the previous. So this shows you the current peak, how much the peak gets lower at that specific time. And momentary loudness units shows you how much perceived loudness you're gaining from the plugin, and integrated is also how much perceived loudness you gain, but it's the integrated value. Those get resetted every time you touch anything that affects the readings. So pretty much every knob will reset that, or you can push this little button to reset that. The new numbers down here shows you the most peak reduction at somewhere in the track. It measures this peak reduction, and that doesn't. I did it because I wanted. I'm working with a way to see if I can come up with a number that's the best number for the whole track, but I don't think that actually work, and I always prefer auto mode. So this is mostly of development reasons it's left there, but it's pretty funny to see how much gain or peak reduction you actually can get from rotating the face. So if we play a snippet of the song, you can see that it got stuck on -4.3 and -60. This means that at the position where we gained the max in headroom was -4.3 decibels of headroom. That's crazy. That's a lot. And that occurred at -60 degrees. It doesn't tell you when, so it's just at one specific place. I don't remember if I used samples or milliseconds to measure, and I think I used milliseconds in the end because sample level that's crazy. So I think this is 1 millisecond somewhere in the track. So the value doesn't say much. You can try if you want to put what it came up with here, -60 in fixed mode. See if that sounds good. Normally it will show you high rotation values, so when you rotate a lot, and that will take away a lot of the energy from the track, so it's not that useful. It's probably better. Oh, sorry, it was positive. It was 60, not -60. In this track, for example, you probably get a better result by using 47 perhaps, or something like that. So you don't take away as much energy, but you're still lowering the peaks. So yeah, that's just to explain what those numbers are. And the final thing that's new is a limiter section, and that comes from me realizing that even if you bring down the average peak level of the whole track, and peaks, most part of the peak is actually lower, but you can, by phase rotating just a low end, you can create small peaks that are maybe just a sample or 2 or 3 long, but they are really high. So they are probably too short to really affect anything in your chain, but they are enough to give you values that you don't want when you render stuff. So let's go to this window, and I'm gonna render this just with these settings. I don't know what the result will be, but let's do that. Hopefully it's the result that I'm looking for. Let's see now. Yeah, there we go. As you can see here, that we have overs. It's not crazy. It's just a couple of places in the track that we get overs. And we have true peaks going up to plus 1.2. And even if you gain loudness, you don't want this in. I mean, you can put a clipper or a limiter or anything post BassFlip to handle those, and that's what I used to do. But I thought, why don't I just add a limiter? So by engaging that, and you do that with this little button. I haven't named this. There are no names in the interface or anything. But this activates it, and that LED lights up. This means that the limiter is active. And if we do the same thing, let's render this, and hopefully all the overs will be gone. And the way this works is you don't set a threshold or anything. The plugin will find the highest peaks of the incoming signal, and it will apply that as your ceiling. So the idea is that you will never have higher peaks than the original, or at least very close to. So that's the idea with this. But I didn't stop at doing that. So I wanted a little fun while I'm creating new stuff. I thought, let's try something. So I added soft clipping. There's actually 3 stages in this limiter. It's first a soft clipper, then it's a hard clipper, then it's a limiter, and it applies a little of all 3 of them to come up with a limiting that's pretty transparent and not too intrusive. It's supposed to be transparent, but it's fun to add color as well. So the soft clipping algorithm, I added a little boost, and I did that with this control that sits around where you activate the limiting. And let's listen how that sounds. And let's start with that button. I'm going to talk about that button soon. You can hear that I'm boosting the signal by maybe I think it's like 2 decibels or something like that. And I also add a lot of saturation. So let's listen in delta. It's I kept it like this because it's a very nice saturation. I'm using a little of it in basically every track, so that's why I kept that. It's not really something that's necessary for this plugin for BassFlip, but I liked it, so I'm gonna keep it. This button that sits beside the limiting thing, that is a gain compensation for the soft clipper. So if you put that in, then it doesn't change the gain as you start to saturate the signal. So that can be useful as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you use the limiter without boosting the soft clipping algorithm, then it's very transparent. If you start to push that, I'm usually just maybe this is probably my max position, so I'm not using it that much. But it sounds nice even when you max it out. But yeah, around here. The idea is that you can use that headroom that you gain from BassFlip and add a little bit of distortion and maybe a little bit of level using the auto gain or the auto loudness compensation thing down here, and use that together with the limiter, and then you get a hotter signal, but it will sound the same post or about the same depending on how much you saturate the signal, of course, but about the same when it's normalized on Spotify and YouTube and stuff like that, on streaming services. Yeah, I think I will stop talk right now about BassFlip. We're getting closer to a final version, but I thought I'm gonna let you play around with this version and come with some comments and stuff you want changed. So before we go to version 1. That's it for today. Have a good one, and I see you with the next one. Bye bye.